I live at Tabokoto.
What is your occupation?
I am now a retired politician, not actively in politics.
You mentioned that you were honorable at a certain point. You were a member of parliament.
Yes, I was.
Can you tell us from what period you were a member of parliament?
I was elected in 2002, and I came into parliament when we were sworn in March 2002.
And how long did you actually serve in that position?
I was at the parliament from 2002 until my arrest on the 31st of May 2006.
Can you give us a brief summary of your educational and professional background?
Okay, I started at the Sutukoba Primary School in 1962 to 1968. Upon completion and having passed the primary 6 exam.
Where was, sorry for interrupting you, where was Sutukoba Primary School located? You proceed.
Yeah. Then from there, I attended Krabalam Junior Secondary School at that time, and I completed it in 1971. Then I went into the hotel industry. I served in the hotel industry from 1972 until 2000, when I left and decided to go into politics.
Give us a brief explanation of your political activities after you decided to go into politics.
First, I approached the people of Woolly East and showed them that I was interested to become their parliamentarian, and they accepted, selected me, and then they endorsed my selection, and we went into the campaign process, and then I won the elections.
What motivated you to represent your community at the parliament?
You know, if you know the geographical history of the Gambia, I come from a constituency which is very poor. Poor in terms of services, poor in terms of education. There were many things lacking in my community. So I believed that having served at the parliament, I could do a lot for them.
And which political party did you represent at the parliament?
I was with the APRC.
Kindly tell us, after you were elected as a National Assembly member, kindly tell us what kind of activities you engaged in, and perhaps what concerns you took up at the level of the parliament for your constituency.
Okay, when I became a member at the National Assembly, I was selected in various committees which deal with issues concerning the Gambian people. And we used to go around the country sometimes, visit the people, and come back to Parliament and discuss these issues. And I was among the parliamentarians who were there to implement laws and policies.
Was there anything that stood out whilst you were a member of Parliament? Was there any activities that you embarked on that stood out?
Yes, I was very vocal in my contributions at the adjournment debate. I used to bring out issues concerning the Gambian people, and I used to discuss them at length.
Can you give us examples of some of these issues that you brought out?
Okay. For example, there was a time I visited my community. This was at the end of the groundnut harvest. I found that their seed nuts were collected and were put in the various, secos, and they were given a piece of paper each. So they could not access their money, and their seeds were taken away from them. So when I came back to the parliament, I raised this issue. It was because I was really concerned. These farmers were there poor. They had their groundnuts stored somewhere. They could not get access to their money. So I was making a suggestion to the Minister of Agriculture then, because they were all seated with his technocrats. And I told them that I want to make a suggestion that government does not buy groundnut from farmers. But if any company or persons come and say, I want to buy groundnut from farmers, they should ask him a substantial amount of money which should be put in the central bank, so that in the event they fail to pay these farmers, that money could be tapped to pay them. And then I went on to elaborate on a loan that we had ratified in the parliament, which was supposed to construct the Lamenkoto Pasamas Road. That road ends from where I come from. And it took time, because that was ratified in 2003, and the road was not still constructed. And my people were finding it very difficult to travel under all circumstances.
Was this particular loan given to the government of the Gambia?
It was.
And are you saying that the purpose for which the loan was given was not implemented?
It was not implemented.
You said that you were very vocal, and you've given examples of how vocal you were in Parliament.
Yes.
Can you tell us some of the, can you tell us perhaps some of the effects this had, on your membership in Parliament?
Some people did not take it very well with me, because they believe, they believe that I was a member for the ruling party, and that I should not contradict the party at any given time. And that was not my belief. My belief was I was there for the Gambian people, and I was there to discuss issues that concern the Gambian people.
Are you saying that you were expected not to be independent as a member of Parliament?
Yes, of course.
Just going back to the loan, do you know whether this loan was actually disbursed to government?
It was endorsed in the Parliament, and I believe it was lying somewhere.
You said you served in Parliament from 2002, May 2002 to 2006.
Yes.
Did anything unusual happen to you whilst you were serving as a member of Parliament?
At that time, I used to hear comments from certain people saying, she is a member of APRC, but she's not a strong supporter of APRC. But let's wait, we'll do something about her. I once heard some people discussing that.
Do you know which people were discussing that?
I once heard Fatoumata Jahumpa talking to some people.
Did you see that as a threat or an attempt to intimidate you?
It was a threat, but I did not take it as a threat, because I am a very strong person, and if I make my decision to do something, nobody can stop me from doing it.
As a woman parliamentarian, did you face any challenges as a woman?
Oh yes, there are many challenges. Financially, finance is a problem in politics. You must be financially equipped. And women also sometimes look on the other side when you are a woman leader. So you really have to know your place, and you really have to have patience and content.
How did you gain the support of your constituency as a woman who was from an area where perhaps traditional and cultural norms dictated that women should not occupy certain decision-making positions?
That does not apply to my people in Woolly East. They are very aware, constitutionally they are very aware of their rights, and they know that as a woman, and they knew me since I was a baby. I grew up with them, so they knew me very well. I was interacting with them, and they decided that I could serve them.
You mentioned that you were being intimidated by a particular member of Parliament. You mentioned Fatoumata Jahumpa Ceesay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
What did you refer to her as?
What did I?
What name did you refer to her as?
They call her FJC.
FJC,
Yes.
yes. Okay, and you were referring to Fatoumata Jahumpa Ceesay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us who she was?
She was a member of Parliament at that time, a nominated member for that matter.
Which means she was nominated by
Yes.
which party?
By the APRC, by the president then.
Okay. That means she was not actually elected by
She
any
was not
constituency.
elected. She was among the nominated members.
So she was there to represent the interests of the APRC
Yes,
party?
of course.
Around 2006 of May,
Mm-hmm.
did anything happen to you?
Yes, one of my sons became mentally sick. I decided to take her to Senegal for treatment, Dakar. And I took permission from the speaker through the clerk's office, and I was granted permission, and I took him to Dakar. We were there until I was there until the 30th of May, when I left Dakar to come back to the Gambia because I was supposed to attend the AU summit. There was an AU summit in the Gambia. I was a member of the organizing committee. I came to attend that summit and also to visit my family. And that was when, on my arrival at Amdalai, I was escorted by an officer, I believe. He was in civilian clothes, and who took me to Bara.
Can you explain what you mean by escorted?
First he called me in and he collected all my documents. I had my national ID card, my passport, and my National Assembly card because I always travel with my ID cards. He collected them and he informed me that he was asked to escort me to the police station.
And that was the Amdalai police station?
No, he took me to Bara. He took me inside the Amdalai police station. There was a small room, an office, I think. Then after that, after informing me that I was to be arrested, he took me to Bara.
So at Amdalai police station, he informed you that you were under arrest?
Yes.
Did he tell you the reason why you were arrested?
No.
Did he record your presence in the station, perhaps in the station diary?
Did he?
Did he record anything in the station diary to show that you were there?
Not to my knowledge.
What happened next? You said he took you to Bara.
He took me to Bara, and we arrived in Bara at the early hours of the morning, which was before 6. And he handed me to the officer, the station officer at Bara. And to my surprise, I was put in a cage. And they put a padlock on the cage. It's a cage outside the cells, but it is behind the counter.
And how long were you detained there?
I stayed there until when the morning prayers were called, and I asked the officer, I said, could I pray? And he said yes.
What time was that?
This was around after 6 when the early morning prayers were called.
And what time were you actually arrested at Amdalai?
I arrived at Amdalai between 4:30 and 5.
So after you prayed your morning prayers, what happened next?
Then I was there for some time with him. He asked me to sit outside. And after finishing my morning prayers, I told him, listen, I know that I am under arrest. What do you think I am going to run away? I said, I'm not going to run away. So there is no need for you to put me in a cage. So he gave me a chair and I sat down.
Where you were detained, whilst you were detained in the cage, were you detained with anyone else there?
No, I was only on my own.
Okay, so you were later released from the cage and you were allowed to sit behind the counter?
Exactly.
And what happened next?
Then when the ferry arrived, I believe, he escorted me to the ferry and took me to the crime unit in Banjul.
Is that the major crimes unit or the serious crimes unit in Banjul?
The serious crime unit in Banjul, police station.
Okay. And who did you meet when you went to the serious crimes unit?
I was escorted there, and then they asked me to sit down in a big room. I was there, and I used to see officers coming in and out, but they never said anything to me, and I sat there from that morning until 5 p.m.
And what time did you arrive at the Banjul police station?
It must be after 8 to 9.
And when you sat there from morning until 5 p.m., what happened?
I was just sitting there, and then someone said to me, do you want to buy food? I said, no, I don't need food. I don't need to eat anything, because I don't know why I'm here.
So you were not questioned during that time?
No, I was not.
And you were not informed why you were arrested?
No.
You were not given your rights?
No.
Were you told that you were entitled to a lawyer, for example?
No, Counsel.
Okay. So what happened after you remained at Banjul police station until 5 p.m.?
They escorted me to the NIA headquarters.
At the time, did you know where the NIA headquarters was situated at?
I used to see that building, but it was written on it GPMB, so I thought it was an office. It was a government office, but upon my entry, I discovered that was the NIA headquarters.
Were you informed that it was the NIA office when you entered?
They didn't tell me where they were taking me, and they did not tell me that was the NIA office. But I could see that it was the NIA office.
How did you discover that it was the NIA office?
I saw them bringing other detainees in, and they were interrogating other people. So I knew that was the NIA office.
Did any of the officers identify themselves to you as NIA officers?
No, they did not.
But you knew you were at the NIA office?
Of course I know.
Okay. Did you know the director at the time of the NIA?
Yes, the director at the time was Harry Sambo.
Okay, and did you see him in that premises?
After some days, I saw him.
After you arrived at the NIA, please tell us what happened.
They took me into a large room where there was a panel of 8 men. They were all seated around the table, and I sat at the other side of the table like this, and they started questioning me.
Can you tell us where within the premises of the NIA this room was actually located in?
When you go inside the NIA, you will be facing a building like that. And then when you go under that building, that conference room was there. It was a conference room.
And was the building located on your right-hand side or on your left-hand side?
It was in the middle of the building, the building of the premises.
Okay. And can you describe the room itself that you went into?
It was fairly large, not as large as this room, but it was fairly large. That could accommodate some chairs and tables.
And there was it a conference table, for example,
It was
with
a
chairs
conference,
surrounding it?
Yes, they made a conference table.
And you said there were 8 men seated?
Yes, they were.
Did you recognize any of these men?
Some of them I came to recognize later. One of them was Fali Jama, who I knew now after some time through the internet. That information I got through the internet, that he was among the junglers.
And who were the junglers?
They were the people committing atrocities for the former president and the former regime.
What kind of atrocities were they committing?
Well, they were torturing people, putting them in detention, and some people died in detention. Some people died after detention. So all those sufferings, I call them atrocities.
Okay. And how did you come about this information about the junglers torturing people and people dying under their custody?
This was no secret rumor in the Gambia. It was a rumor, but it was a rumor that was going around, and it was real, and people were talking about it. Even if you have to go behind doors and talk about it, people were talking about it.
Did you, for example, hear about the junglers through any particular source, any particular reliable source?
No, I only hear it from people.
All right. Can you tell us who else was on that table?
There was somebody they called Mr. Cisse. I don't know his first name, because they were calling themselves by their second names, Cisses and all that, like that.
Do you know from which institution he came from?
I think he came from the police.
And do you know what his capacity was at the police?
No, I did not.
Any other people you recognized or remembered?
No. At that conference table, those were the people. I can't remember any of them anymore.
You said, how did you say these men were dressed?
Pardon?
How did you say they were dressed?
They were all dressed in civilian clothes.
Okay. Were they civilians?
They looked like civilians.
They looked like civilians, but do you know?
But I knew they were NIA officers.
Okay. Some of them were NIA officers, is that correct?
Yes, some of them.
Yes, because you mentioned that there were other people from other
the police
service units.
Yes.
Okay, so they were from the service.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us what happened after you went into the room and met this group of men?
The moment I sat down, there was another man called Nuru Cham. He was the first man. He made a statement to me. That was not a question. He said to me, Honorable, we are going to ask you a question, but don't lie to us. I said to him, what makes you believe that I'm a liar? And do I know what you are going to ask me? If you want to ask me any questions, please do so. Don't ever call me a liar.
Do you know who appeared to be leading the group?
That Nuru was leading the group for that interrogation.
And do you know who he was?
I don't know.
You don't know from which service unit
No,
he was from?
not at all.
Okay. So what happened after? What other questions did they ask you?
They asked me some irrelevant questions like which newspapers do I read? And I said I read all newspapers in the Gambia because I want to be updated on anything that is happening in the Gambia. But I told them particularly I read Foraya. That's my favorite paper.
Did they receive that news well?
They started smiling and laughing amongst themselves, for what reason best known to them.
Were you suspicious about why they would be laughing at such a comment?
I don't know. I didn't bother to ask. But they asked me a question and I answered.
What else did they ask you?
Then they asked me if I was corresponding with Freedom Paper. And I asked them, what is Freedom Paper? And they told me it's a paper that is, conducted by Panderimbai. And I said, who is Panderimbai? I don't know him, and I don't correspond with him. So they said, what is my email address? I gave them my email address, which was at that time hdkamaso@yahoo.com. Then they came up with another email address and asked me, what do you know about BUTOs? I said, that's your own thinking and your own logo. I don't know anything about that.
And why were they asking you about your email addresses?
Because they wanted to get into my email, which they eventually did.
And what happened when they did?
We went to the computer. This Fali Jaban was the one conducting the computer. And he asked me to type my own email address, which is mine, and I did. Then I put my left hand over my right hand and typed my password, because that belongs to me. I didn't want anybody to see it. So when I did that, he said to me, Honorable, then the email ran and said, this email address is closed. Do you want to reactivate? I punched no. Then he said to me, no, Honorable, that's not what you should do. I said, what should I do? Then he started talking in Mandinka. And he said, because he thought I cannot understand English. So he said to me, Yalo nimbundati nyata, eka chabo la keje. Then I said to him, tele tamu chabo, what on te chabi kelaje? Meaning, if a door is broken down, you should replace it with a new key. I say, I'm the owner of the door, so I'm not intending to put a new key on it.
You also mentioned that they asked you questions about Panderi and Freedom newspaper. Do you know why they were asking you questions about that?
I later came to realize that they were framing people, that people were giving information to Panderi and Freedom paper, and that I was one of them.
So at that point, you knew that that is the reason why you had been arrested and brought to the NIA.
I think that was one of the reasons why I was brought to the NIA.
You suspected that, or you were under the impression that you were suspected of supplying information to Panderi?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned Nur Cham as being part of the panel, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know where he is at this current moment in time?
No, I've not seen him since then.
Okay. Did you know him at the time?
No, I didn't know him.
Do you know which force he belonged to?
I just saw him at the NIA.
Okay, that's fine. Were there any more questions asked during the interrogation?
They asked me if I had any fight with anybody at the National Assembly, or if I had any differences with anybody at the National Assembly. And my response was, I believe they were my colleagues in politics, so why should I have any fight with anybody? And they asked me certain names if I had any problem with them. They asked me if I had problem with Fatoumata Jahumpa, FJC, and they asked me if I had any problem with Yankuba Toure. And to my knowledge, I did not have any problem with them.
Do you know if there were any other reasons apart from supplying information to Freedom newspaper why you were arrested? For example, what you've just mentioned, having grievances against certain APRC um, members of parliament.
Already, I told you I was a National Assembly member, and I could read and write, and I understand when you bring laws to me that are to be implemented in the parliament, and I do disagree with some of them. So I never had interest with them in certain issues. But I knew that the National Assembly always goes by the eye. So when the eyes are plenty, they have it.
Are you saying that perhaps part of the reason you were arrested was because you were vocal about
Yes, I
certain
was.
issues
Yes,
and
I
you did
was.
not toe the APRC party line?
Yes.
Okay. Um, any other questions asked on the day
They did
at
not
the
ask me
panel?
any more questions. We went into the computer.
Yes.
And then when he ran the computer, it said it is closed. And I pointed and did not reactivate it. So he made that remark in Mandinka, and I also made the answer in Mandinka. Then he closed the computer, and they asked me that they were going to take me to my house.
Before they told you they were taking you to their house, did they at any point tell you what offense you had committed?
These people never told me anything to date. Never.
So what happened after they said they were going to take you to your house?
They found cars. They were equipped with a lot of four-wheel drives. They put me in one of them, and some people sat side by side with me, and they escorted me to my house. These same men, 8 of them.
8 of the panel members, all
Yes.
of them
Yeah.
escorted you to your
Yeah.
house
Yes.
in these vehicles.
Yes.
Can you describe these vehicles?
They were four-wheel drives.
Do you remember their color?
Some were white.
Okay. Were they tinted?
Some were tinted.
Did they have any number plates?
I could not recall that.
Okay. And what happened? Were you escorted into one of these vehicles?
Yes, I was.
And what happened?
They took me to my house, and they entered my sitting room and entered my bedroom. And at that time, I had an open cell with all my papers. And I remember I had one of them saying, so this woman can speak English and can write English. So somebody turned to him and said, you are not very intelligent. You should know that he's a National Assembly member. I heard them over saying that, but I ignored their comments.
Did they search your house?
Yes, they did. They searched my house, they looked at the papers. I had a briefcase under my bed because I knew that I am now arrested and I'm going to be questioned. So I took out the briefcase and opened it for them because they were asking me if I was corresponding with Panderi. So I believe if I did not take it out, if they find it, they might think that I was hiding it. So I opened it with a combination and asked them to look inside.
And did they look inside, and
Yes,
what did
they
they
did.
find?
And then one of them said to me, these are your personal documents, close it. And I closed it and put it back.
Did they find anything in your house that was of interest to them?
They did not find anything at all.
Did they take anything away?
They did not take anything away. They did not find anything apart from my documents from the parliament.
When you went to your house, was there any member of your family present?
Yes, my first son was there with his wife and my grandchildren and my extended family.
And how did they react when they saw you walking with those 8 men from the NIA?
My son was very sad, but he's a man and he stood well. But my daughter-in-law was the one who was broken down because she was pregnant at that time. Carry on. Carry on.
Please take your time.
Yeah, carry on.
So how did she break down? How did she react?
She's a very emotional person, and she can cry a lot over anything that hurts anybody.
And how did that make you feel?
I felt bad. I really felt bad.
So tell us what happened after your family members saw you and they got emotional.
You know, I traveled throughout the night from Dhaka, and I was detained at the NIA the next morning, up to 5 o'clock, and then we went to my house around some minutes, 6 to 7. So
Is that in the morning or at night?
I was arrested in the morning.
Yes.
I spent the whole day, half of the day at the headquarters.
Yes.
Then I was taken to the NIA, interrogated, and was taken to my house. And this was around 7 p.m. So my son looked at me and said, "Mom, are you hungry?" I said, "Yes, of course. I did not eat anything." So he asked them if he could buy food for me. He could provide food for me, and they said yes. And he provided a sandwich for me, which I took along with me.
Were your family members aware that these people were from the NIA and that you were actually being escorted back to the NIA?
Oh, yes. Any sensible family at that time, if they see these people, they would know that they are from the NIA.
Why is that so? How did they appear?
Because the way they appear is they are in civilian clothes, but you can see that they were people who were very serious with people. They did not waste time with anybody, and the way they escorted you would tell your family that this is the NIA.
Did they manhandle you or treat you with any violence?
No, they did not. They did not. They did not. They did not manhandle me.
How did they speak to you, for example?
They just treated me like a detainee.
It was obvious that you had your rights were taken away from you.
Of course, madam. Of course.
Okay. So what happened after you had some food to eat? What happened next?
Now, when my son brought this food, they asked me that we should go back to the NIA, and I took my food with me. I had it in the evening. So when we went back, they put me in a room, an open room, and I found some men who were also detained, and they asked me to sit down with them.
Tell us which room you were taken to. What was the location of the room within the NIA premises, please?
You see, when you enter the NIA, this is the first room on your right. It is I think it is a reception area for them. That is with a green painted window. That at that time, that is where we were kept.
Can you describe the room itself, the appearance of the room and the condition of that room and how big it was?
The room had one window and one door, and it was a very rough carpet that was put on the floor, and that is where we used to sleep.
Were any beddings provided to you?
Not at all.
And what was the state of the floor that you were lying on?
I mean, this is a carpet where people walk on throughout the day because people were coming in and out. And in the evening, that's where we used to sleep.
You mentioned that at no time were you informed the reasons of your arrest. But do you know who was responsible for your arrest, or perhaps who reported you to the NIA?
I could not tell to date.
Do you have any suspicions?
The only suspicion I would have is that I was not in line with some members. I would have said that.
And who were these members you were not in line with?
The ones I mentioned before.
Can you please just repeat
like
that?
FJC, Fatoumata Jahumpa.
Sorry. What about Yankuba Toure? Do you think that he had anything to do with your arrest?
You know, there was a time we went to my constituency on these political tours. And to my amazement, they called my chief, Yankuba, my chief, Fatoumata, and some other members. They went inside the room. And then I was not accepted in the room. I didn't know what they discussed. Then when we went to Basse, I heard my former chief, he's late now. I heard him saying, yes, she's very detrimental to the party and the government. I overheard that. So when the announcement was made that I was arrested because I was involved in activities that were detrimental to the government and the party. So I knew some people were behind it.
Do you know what they meant by activities that were detrimental to the government?
Not to my knowledge.
As far as you were concerned, did you actually do any activities
I
that
didn't
were
do
detrimental
any
to
activity.
the
As
government?
far as I am concerned, I was serving my people and I was trying to talk the truth, nothing but the truth at the parliament.
Madam Witness, can I just remind you just to wait until I ask my
Okay.
question
Thank
before
you.
responding?
Sorry.
Just for the interpreters so that they are able to keep up with the interpretations. Yeah, thank you. After you were arrested, do you know whether any of your National Assembly counterparts, the other members of the National Assembly, do you know if they were aware of your arrest?
Oh yes, everybody was aware of my arrest.
Do you know how they became aware of your arrest?
They knew it when the announcement was made.
And where was this announcement made?
It was on the Point newspaper.
Do you have a copy of that Point newspaper with you?
Yes, I have it here.
Okay,
It
can
was the 2nd of June.
Which year was this?
This was 2006.
Okay, thank you. Can we make it available to the commissioners, please? Mr. Chairman, we would like to make an application for the Point newspaper dated the 2nd of June 2006 to be part of the record.
Application granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Sorry. Exhibit number. Mr. Chairman, the exhibit number is 0053. Thank you. Okay. Do you know how they reacted when they heard the news that you were arrested and detained?
Some of them were very sad. But I knew that some were happy that I was out of the way.
Did they do anything after you were arrested?
Not to my knowledge.
They didn't do anything to assist you or to remove you from detention or to petition the authorities?
No, nobody ever came to visit me or ask me for anything.
Apart from your detention being reported on the newspaper, can you tell us what else was actually stated on the newspaper, apart from your arrest and detention?
Whilst I was in detention, I became very sick. And I don't know how the public knew about it, but it was rumored in the country that I was dead. And some even said they saw my corpse going to my home village. It was carried to my home village.
And how did you know about this?
This is the Gambia. People talk a lot, they gossip a lot, and even if they hide, sometimes you can get information.
Did your family hear about this untrue information?
In fact, some people went to pay condolence to my family.
And how did they react to that?
My daughter-in-law said they were having lunch when a group of people came, and they stood there, they saw my family having lunch, and they were not emotional. So she said to them, no, she's not dead. That's what you heard, but she's alive.
Just going back to the newspaper, perhaps you would like to have a copy of the newspaper to remind yourself, but apart from the fact that you were arrested and detained, the newspaper actually reported something else that happened to you in relation to your membership of the APRC party. Can you remember what that was?
It was said in the newspaper that I was involved in activities detrimental to the government and the party.
And did you still remain a member of the APRC according to the newspaper article?
I was expelled, and that was the end of it for me.
And that led to your dismissal as a National Assembly member?
No, they expelled and dismissed me from the National Assembly. They did not give me any official letter, but I never went back.
And this was, you had been expelled at the point of being arrested and detained.
Exactly, madam.
You were no longer a member of the APRC party and you were dismissed from the National Assembly.
No more.
Okay. So let's just go back to your first night in detention. Can you please just explain the condition of the room that you were being detained? Can you give us further explanation about how that room appeared to be and the condition it was under?
You know, in that room there was one easy chair, and then the male felt that I should use it. So I was sitting down almost throughout the night. And then I was thinking, what's happening? Why am I here? What is going to happen? You know, you ask all those questions yourself. But I never got any answer. And I think that night I was really traumatized.
You mentioned that you were detained with some men.
Yes.
Were you the only woman there?
Yes, I was.
And you were detained with these men? You were not separated?
No, I was not.
Okay. Can you, do you remember any of these men you were detained with, their names and perhaps where they came from?
Yes, I was detained. We found one Lamin Fati there, who's a freelance journalist. And I was detained with Malik Mboob, Lamin Bojang, and one Buba Jamme, who came from the armed forces.
And do you know why these men were detained at the NIA at that point?
Apart from Lamin Fati, the rest of us were, accused of having corresponding with Panderimbai, Freedom Paper.
And what about Lamin Fati? Do you know why he was detained?
I believe he is a journalist, and he also might have got some information about the government.
But most of the people you were detained with, according to you, were detained because of perhaps suspected information they may have given to Freedom newspaper.
Yes, Council.
Okay. How long were you detained at the NIA? How long were you detained for?
I was arrested on the 31st May and was acquitted on the 9th of October, 2006.
And that would be a period of about over 4 months?
Exactly,
Is that correct?
Council. Yes, Council.
And during that time that you were detained at the NIA, you were kept in this room that you described?
Yes, Council.
And were you there with all of these other men, or did they leave at some point and some other people came?
No, for these people I have mentioned, I was there with them until my release. But during our release, there used to be other people arrested, brought in, stay there for some days or some weeks, and they go home. Or they go away. I don't know where they go.
So were there can you remember which other people came in after you were detained?
Several people, but I remember one Abu Dandenjai, who was with the IEC. He was an elderly man, very educated, highly educated.
And what position did he hold at the IEC?
He was he was one of the officers.
And when he was brought in, can you just describe his condition and if you know what he was brought in for?
I didn't know why he was brought in for and what. What I saw, he was very uncomfortable. He was an elderly man, and he started talking to himself. So I decided to give him some Ovaltine mixture, and I sat down by him, and I started talking to him, and I told him, look, I am also detained. So take your time, don't harm yourself, otherwise your blood pressure might rise.
And how long was he detained at the NIA for?
He was there with us for a day, and I think he was acquitted on the next day.
Do you know where he was taken to?
No idea, madam.
Okay. Any other people that you remember?
During the course of my detention, one day, the present Speaker of the National Assembly, Mariam Denton, was brought in. She said they brought her from the Mile 2 Central Prison. And there she sat, and she also was not with herself, because she was very scared. You could see that. I am a mature person. I know when somebody is terribly scared. She was so uncomfortable and started talking. And then when she realized that I was the one next to her, then she said, "Oh, Honorable, you are still here." I said, "Yes." And she told me, "Honorable, be careful. Don't let these people take you to Mile 2. I said, "Why?" She said, "You will die if they take you there. They will torture you until you die." And that was very emotional. And we cling together, and we cried a lot.
And who was Mariam Denton at the time when she was the
Lawyer, a lawyer by profession, and I knew she was a very strong supporter of the UDP party.
And did you mention what position she currently holds?
She's the present Speaker of the National Assembly.
You mentioned that she informed you that she was tortured. Is
Yes,
that correct?
she did.
Did she tell you how she was tortured?
We did not go into that detail.
Did you see from her appearance or her condition, did you actually see that she had been tortured?
But yes, you could see that, because I knew her. We were not well acquainted, but I knew her, and she was really drained, if you know what I'm talking about.
You mentioned Alamin Fati, who was a freelance journalist, detained at the NIA. Were there any other journalists who also who were detained at the NIA, brought to the place where you were kept?
You know, I forgot to mention that on the day I was arrested, one Lamin Cham, who's a BBC journalist, a sport journalist, was also arrested. But I did not see him until the next day. At night, they brought him in. He was tortured outside the room. And when they finished with him, they took him to our room. And I could see that he was severely tortured.
Can you just describe where you say he was tortured?
He had lashes all over his body. His one eye was blackened. The nail on his right toe was ripped up. And he told us that he was severely beaten.
Did you see him being tortured?
No, I did not see, but I could hear him crying outside.
Do you know who was responsible for his torture? Did you see his torturers or hear anything about who tortured him?
It was some personnel from the NIA. That's what he told us, but I didn't know who was torturing him.
You don't know who these personnel were?
But he mentioned one Musa Jamme, who was among the torturers.
Okay. And
I learned that from him.
Okay. Did he tell you who Musa Jamme was, apart from being an NIA officer, of course?
Musa Jamme was somebody who was going around with Yaya Jamme all the time.
And you mentioned that at the time, Harry Sambu was the director of the NIA.
Yes, Council.
Okay. And he was aware of everybody that was detained at the NIA premises?
Yes, Council.
So tell us what happened after Lamin Cham was tortured and he came into your detention place. What happened next?
The next day, I think they took him to a clinic, a military clinic, treated him, and then that was when I did not see him again. Whether he was discharged or taken somewhere else, I didn't know. I've not seen him to date.
What was his condition after he was tortured?
He had injuries, like I told you. He was there, and you could see that somebody who's been tortured, how he felt. He was not really in a good shape.
And did you do anything for him?
Yes, we asked the security officers to boil some hot water for us, and we put a towel, one of our towels, in this hot water with some salt, and we gave him warm compressor so that the wounds can close up.
Can you just describe what kind of wounds he had on his body and where these wounds were located on his body?
He had marks from lashes all over his body, strong lashes.
And these wounds, were they superficial wounds or deep wounds?
They were?
They very slight wounds, or were they deep cuts to the skin?
Some were deep, some were slight.
And you
in
said
fact, the blood was dripping from his body.
blood was dripping from his
body, yes.
And you said he had a toenail that was stripped
That
from
was
his
ripped
toe.
off, yes.
Okay. And you suggested that these wounds were caused as a result of him being whipped.
Yes, Council.
And do you know what kind of instrument was used?
No, I was not there when he was being tortured.
Okay. Any other people that came into detention whilst you were there?
Many people came, Madam. I cannot remember some of those names.
Can you remember any more apart
No.
from the ones you've given us?
No, Council.
Okay. During the time you were detained, did your family members have access to you? Remember you told us that they knew you were going to the NIA premises. Did they have access to you?
For the first 3 days, they did not. It was after some time that my son was allowed to come and see me. And then my daughter-in-law was allowed to come and see me, and my sister.
So for the first 3 days of your detention, you were held incommunicado?
Yes.
You didn't have access to your family?
Yes.
Were you allowed to have a lawyer?
No.
Okay, so what happened after the 3 days?
I was there like that, and we used to sit inside, and in the morning they will take us out, and we used to sit under a tree. I was sitting down all the time, more or less. Then later in the night, they will take us back into the room. And this went on for all this period that I have told you. And eventually, I became sick. I became sick with malaria, and my blood pressure rose. So they took me to the military clinic, which is by the RVTH. And I was treated there, acquitted, and taken back to detention.
Where was this military clinic located?
It's side by side with the RVTH. It faces the State House. It's still there.
Okay. Do you know why you were not taken to the RVTH, for example?
I think anybody at that time I realized who was detained was taken to the military clinic, because I believe they didn't want anybody to know your whereabouts, and for family members or friends to see you at the RVTH.
You said you contracted malaria. How did you contract malaria?
That place was infested with mosquitoes. They used to bite us day in, day out, throughout the night. There was no end to mosquito bites.
So what happened when you were taken to the military clinic?
I was treated by the military doctor.
And how long did you spend at the clinic?
I was very sick. I think I spent more than 1 week there.
And at what point of the detention was that?
This was around August.
And that was how many months into your detention?
4 months.
I believe you told us that you went into detention in May.
Yes.
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 So May, June, July, August.
I became very sick
Yeah.
in August.
Okay. And what eventually happened after you were treated at the clinic?
I was treated because when he took my blood pressure, he saw that it was 175 over 200. So he said I needed treatment. He gave me some treatment, and then my family were allowed to give me some food. They used to bring me some food, decent food. And after some time, when I became better, I was discharged and taken back to detention.
Madam Witness, can you please just bring the mic forward so that we can hear? Just drag it forward, and then you can be comfortable in your seat so that we can hear you properly.
Thank you.
Your speech is fading away.
Thank you.
Yeah. You mentioned that after you were discharged from the hospital, you were allowed food to be brought in for you.
Yes.
Was this at the hospital or at the NIA premises?
No, this was at the hospital.
So your family had access to you at the hospital and they were bringing food?
Yes.
Okay, so what happened when you went back to the NIA?
You know, during my detention, even from the beginning, I refused to eat their food, the food that was served. I refused to eat it. And then one day they took me upstairs to one Mr. Sen. I think he was in charge of all the detainees. He's a blind man. And he said to me, Honorable, I heard that you are not eating food. I said, yes. He said, why? I said, I don't like the food. That's all. She said, that can, deteriorate your health. I said, yes. Mr. Sen, I'm here for two things. Either I die in this detention or I go home. It's one of them that will happen. So he became sympathetic, I think, and he asked me to tell my family to be. I don't know whether he's Abdullah or what. I don't know his first name.
Do you know what his position was at the NIA at the time?
He held a very high position at the NIA because he was at the office upstairs.
Do you know if this Mr. Sen held other high-ranking positions later on in the government, in the APRC government?
I don't know whether he was once nominated as an assembly member or what, I don't know. But he was among the intelligence officers at the NIA.
Can we just go back to your conditions of detention, where you were detained at the reception area in the NIA?
Okay.
Did you have access to a toilet, access to have a shower? Were you given the chance to change clothes?
There was one toilet available to all the detainees, and I was the only female using that with the men at that time.
And this was a toilet. Did it have a bathroom facility?
They had a bathroom facility which was on the other side of the toilet.
Were you also using that with the men?
Yes, I was.
What was the level of privacy that you had?
I used to make myself private, but there was no privacy because I was sitting with men. But as a matured person, I try to cover myself up.
What was the state of the toilet and bathroom facilities? Was it clean, for example?
It was not clean and it was infested with mosquitoes.
Throughout the time you were at the NIA, did you have access to a lawyer in the end?
I decided in the end to engage a lawyer.
I asked you about having change of clothes. Do you remember if you were able to change your clothes?
Yes, when this Mr. Sen took me inside his office, he offered me that my people can give me food and also they can bring me some fresh clothes whenever I need them.
And how far into your detention was this?
This was in the 3rd or 4th month.
So before that, were you able to change your clothes?
No, I was with two dresses, and one I used to wash in a small bucket when it gets dirty.
And how did you have the second dress?
Pardon?
How did you have the second dress? Did you have it with you when you were being
I had it with me
arrested?
when I was arrested.
Otherwise, you would not have had the opportunity
No.
to have a second dress?
No.
So what happened in regard to the lawyer that you said you were able to engage?
Yes, when I became very fed up, because I was fed up, Council. Yes. I was tired, I was getting sick, I was emotional, my family were emotional, my friends were emotional. So I engaged the lawyer through my son. I engaged lawyer Bori Ture through my son.
And what did he do for you?
I asked my son to tell him that I want to be released on condition on 9th of October.
And do you believe that you were released because of his intervention?
Oh yes, he's a strong lawyer.
But you didn't go to court.
No, I was not charged, I was not taken to court.
So his interventions were not of the legal nature.
They were because he's a legal practitioner, so he must have taken some legal steps, of course.
All right, thank you. Tell us what happened during your release. How were you informed that you were going to be released, and under what conditions were you released?
They called me one day to the office. That office was manned by one Demba Jao, I think. He lives at Farato now. He told me that I was being released and that I should call someone from my family who should bring his or her ID card to bail me out. And then I was asked to come to report to the NIA every Friday. I did that for 2 weeks, and I decided I was not going to report again. And I never reported. I never had contact with them. There was no official letter written to me that I was dismissed. And I took a low profile and stayed at home.
You mentioned that you were bailed by a family member. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Were you charged with any offense?
Not at all.
And you also mentioned that after reporting for about 2 weeks,
Yes.
you did not report again.
Yes, I took that upon myself not to report again.
Did anything happen to you? Were you rearrested?
No.
And after that, were you arrested at any point as a result of any of the activities you were engaged in?
No, but I knew that I was being observed because I used to see some plainclothes people around my premises.
And who did you suspect was actually following you?
It must be the NIA personnel.
And do you know why they were observing your movements?
That I may be giving information about NIA and I may be, talking to people, and maybe I would abscond from the country, which I did not.
Please tell us what impact this whole ordeal has been on you and your family.
You see, one day when I was in detention, it was rumored in the Gambia that I was dead. And somebody even confirmed to some people that he saw people taking my corpse to my people in Sutukoba, which is Willie East. So that was very traumatizing for me and my family. That had a big impact on me. The other impact is I am a woman who believes in advocacy. I believe that as a woman of my caliber, I can do something for my country. I can support people's issues, and I can discuss and have dialogue on how to bring development to the people of the Gambia. And I started doing that. I was hand in glove with the people of my constituency. I was very popular. They liked me, I liked them. And it was a cordial relationship. And all of a sudden, all this stopped. And I had no power to say or do anything or to defend myself or the people. So I felt I was demotivated. That still carries a big weight on me. I still want to do something for my country, which I believe I can.
What about the torture that you witnessed? Did that have any impact on you? Were you traumatized by that?
Oh yes, as a woman and a mother, and me especially, I'm someone you can ask my family. I don't want to see anybody beating a small child. That is a nature in me. So when I see people being tortured, it gets to my heart, really, Council.
Can you tell us what happened after you were dismissed? Did you follow this up? Did you make any complaints about your dismissal from the National Assembly?
The day I left the NIA, before I left, I wrote a letter and asked them to deliver it to the president because I wanted to see him, have appointment with him, and have dialogue with him as to why I was arrested as a National Assembly member. But I believe this letter was never, I don't know, it was never given. There was no response from the president's office, and there was no response from the National Assembly.
Apart from petitioning the president, did you complain elsewhere?
Later on, in 2017, I went to Ombudsman, and I told them about my situation.
And did you have any fruitful results from
No.
your complaints?
In fact, they once told me that I was not among the list of people that were being detained. I said to them then, that must be a misinformation on your side, because my detention was no secret in the Gambia.
Thank you very much, Madam Witness, for your testimony.
You're welcome, Counsel.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I have finished with the witness, and I hand over to you and the commissioners for questioning.
Thank you very much, Counsel, and thank you very much, Mr. KAMASO, for your testimony, notwithstanding the difficulties, the cruelties that you endured. You still have a very unflinching determination to assist a country. It's really commendable. Sorry that you had to go through all the things that you went through. Thank you so much for that service, and thank you for manifesting this kind of determination. Council members, Commission members, yeah, sure, fine. Thank you. Imam C. Sorry, Imam Jallo, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Madam KAMASO.
Yes, sir.
While you were in detention, did you ever experience torture in the cells?
On myself, I was not physically tortured, but I was mentally tortured. Pardon, sir?
The loan that you spoke about.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever follow up to see what happened to that money? Was it used for the purpose for which it was meant or not?
No, I never followed them. I thought the National Assembly was the only place to discuss it.
Thank you. Deputy Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, BUTA. I want to know, when you were in detention, who was taking care of your sick son in Senegal?
When I traveled to Senegal, fortunately for me, I went with a relative because my son was in a private clinic. We booked in a private clinic and I paid for it and I left them there. And this was a very sad part of it because my son did not know what happened to him. They had to tell him that I traveled to America. But he was there with a relative.
Thank you very much. There are no further questions. Commissioner Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one question. Did the National Assembly do anything about your detention?
Whether they did anything about it?
Yes.
No, not to my knowledge.
Thank you very much. You have any concluding remarks to make, Madam KAMASO?
Thank you, sir. I first of all want to address the security forces. They are people in uniform, but they are Gambians in uniform. And they are sons and daughters of this country. However powerful a government may be, one should use your sense in dealing with the civilians. The Gambian people are the people who put any person in power, especially political positions. These positions come and go, but the Gambian people remain. So they ought to be more careful, and they really need to look into matters before malhandling Gambians. That's why, as much as you have been voted on a party ticket, it does not mean that even if that party is in power, you should abide by all the rules and regulations of that party. And you should say yes, yes, yes to everything. The Gambian people are the voters. You looked for their votes, they voted you in. Not everybody can go to the National Assembly. The National Assembly is the Bantaba of the Gambia, the National Bantaba. But it is a Bantaba with a difference. It is a place where people have dialogue, where people discuss serious issues affecting the people, and when it comes to implementing laws, we need to really look at those laws. Because when you implement a law, it takes time to change. As I said in the TRRC, when I was attending the forum, I told them that we should be very careful what laws we are implementing for future leaders and future citizens of this country. The other thing is Gambians need to trust each other. We need to be behind each other. Whether you are in party A or party B, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we are Gambians. We are one family. This Gambia is one family. All this happened here. People became scared. People became terrified, and we became helpless. And we couldn't do anything about it. But most of these, bad things we are talking about were being committed by Gambians. Most of them were committed by Gambians. And we looked upon them as our security officers, as people who should take care of us. As a nation, I think we should start sensitizing the people about our civil rights, our constitutional rights, freedom of speech, and the like. People should live in a country peacefully and not to be harassed by a government that they put in power. I hope this will never happen again. Never will it happen again. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for those wise words and counsel, and thank you again for coming to testify before the TRRC.
Thank you, sir.
We will take an hour and a half break, sorry, an hour, maybe 5 minutes break. We resume here at 2:45. Counsel, is that okay for the next witness?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
Splendid. Fine. We will take a break until 2:45. Meeting is adjourned.
Fear over electoral rigging rocks Zimbabwe as the country.
Yesterday, after listening to Prime Minister May's assessment of the state of the negotiations,
صل على محمود محمد ذي الجود.
bu fekkee yonent bi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mu ngi taxaw mu toog jonkon.
Why it is our diocesan patron feast day is because the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Assumption is dedicated.
Do not have it in their mindset or in their psyche that we are playing against Algeria.